Greetings and salutations. Happy Sunday or whatever day it is that you're watching this. It's my Sunday. And I just wanted to hop on and I'm going to read from Adaptations and Holding Patterns for the Third Hub. So one of the things that in terms of the content that preceded this in the book is the interruptions and stressors sections, which were actually taken, oddly had no sound, and then I got a notification that they were like putting content restrictions, like age restrictions on the content for this channel. And it was immediately apparent to me that I was not going to re-record them and that I was just going to move forward to adaptations and holding patterns. They're really difficult topics, and yesterday when I recorded it, it was, it's challenging subject matter. And I feel it was just immediate clarity that I'm actually not even, so I've read them and they didn't record. And so I've deleted it, and I'm actually not going to read the unfair compensation of labor and bad deals because honestly, it's like I spent 3 years writing this book and arguably hundreds of thousands of dollars, not including my own labor. And it's like, look, if you really want to read this content, you can just read it in your book. And I do not feel strongly enough. It's not even strongly, it's just really apparent to me that it's very okay that folks would have to find this content. And if it is something that you want to discuss, or if there's some type of forum on that's done. But putting it out there unsolicited and having it walled off, I'm like, I'm just going to read the tea leaves here and follow what feels right with this, which is to just continue on with the adaptations and holding patterns, because there's plenty to explore here. And the book absolutely exists in the world. So the content is absolutely accessible. And, if you're somebody that's, look, buy the book, buy the book. Like if it's like killing you to see the pages, buy the book. And we'll continue on because there's some really, like for me, let's see if there's like another thing because this thing with like, I think the FaceTime is up. Yeah, there you go. For me, this hub has is like the crux of probably the work of my life. And so even reading through it, there's a lot of this quality that I've talked about before, which is that the first draft of the book was biographical. The next was kind of pedantic, where I was kind of shifting from my own experience to like explaining it to somebody else. And then the third turn on it, and then like the fourth and whatever came after that, kind of just like separated. And there's a bit more, grace to it in terms of it really speaking to a reader in a way that is like, I'm not really interfering with it that much. And that I do find, and it's subtle, and I don't know that like a casual reader would pick up on this, but I see that that the writing in this still holds some of that kind of second phase in it. And even just some of the thing where I can still see myself in it in a way that is, it's just interesting. It's interesting. So, yeah, and also even reading the interruptions and stressors, when I was writing them, they felt I'll use the word dangerous. Like they felt like they were really, there's a lot of voltage in them, and I didn't pull any punches. Like I didn't hold back anything about them in terms of writing about, and it's really, compared to the surrounding text, it's very well researched. It's, that was one of the things I was noticing, is that there's a lot of really, a lot of citation in there, specifically one to a Harvard study but I'll leave that for readers. Yeah, that's how it's going to be. All right, so I'm going to read now Adaptations and Holding Patterns. And I'm not using the microphone. I'm actually just using the computer microphone for this because I don't know to what extent my microphone played in the sound not working in the last video. But I'm just not going to take any chances today. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time troubleshooting because it's a beautiful day and I want to go outside. So anyway, here we go. Ready or not. So the conditions that shaped our third hub occurred when we were small, and even when those early conditions are no longer in effect, the resulting cognitive biases and beliefs can keep us seeking and validating a worldview that interferes with our freedom and fulfillment. See Chapter 9. It's the whole thing on biases. Maybe we learn that if we speak up, we'll be punished, or that if we're domineering, we'll be overpowered. If we aren't domineering, we'll be overpowered. I'm going to move this over here. The early adaptations in the first three hubs run so deep that the idea of losing them can feel like a threat to our identity. There's the story of a baby elephant pulling against a small stake and rope, which it learned it can't move. Later, as an adult elephant, the same small stake and rope can be used to keep it in place. The early learning persists because the animal has not periodically evaluated and tested it since it was a calf. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. My reading's kind of flat today. But these three hubs, it's interesting because some folks, when talking about how to approach their practice, some people have suggested, like, well, you go to the hub that's the most interesting to you. And I'm kind of, up until now, well, yeah, I'm like, I respectfully disagree with that, because I think the hubs that we tend to be the most interested in are usually not where we need to be exploring. It's usually where we're uncomfortable. So things like power and pleasure and feeling, it's like, who's interested in that? And as far as the exploration of it, and even security. First hub is like a really common one that people are like, yeah, I don't really care about it. But the thing about trust, like, and I don't mean trust in the world, I mean being able to have an embodied sense of trust, to be able to just even have it, to be able to like have that feeling that you can trust that your needs will be met. Because quite frankly, like after for many folks, I'll say, for many folks, after a trauma experience, your physical needs are met, and and philosophical and psychological realities of folks beyond oneself who are suffering. If we have an internalized sense of distrust, we may tack on to the consciousness of other people and use that to validate our own sense that there can be no felt sense of trust in our physical needs being met. I mean, these adaptations will seek the material that they need in order to validate themselves continuously. And to keep in mind, and I always want to put the caveat in there, that these were once life-saving. So they're also like the elephant and the stake. They have this thing that's like, there's a threat and I'm protecting myself against it with either hypervigilance or like shrinking how much I feel because it's too painful, or in terms of power, being, domineering and forceful, or shrinking and like waiting for external validation. So it's either, it's like having power over other people or like being validated. All of that stuff, that's elephant like and stake, like the like stick and what is it called? The stake and rope. All of that, these are the things that like once we needed them and they showed up for us. So the respect for these aspects of ourselves is really an important part of this process because, I see it's like now I have such an acute awareness of the narratives that are brought up in self-help, which are like fighting these parts of ourselves and demeaning them and like calling them out for being, what they are and they're nothing. And it's like that is absolutely not going to be an effective way to work with these parts of ourselves. Like absolutely not. Like it's just more, it's like the shaming reflex, like finding another way to actually like exist, where if we can see that these qualities are something to really respect and admire, um, but that we don't need them anymore to relieve them of their duty, and allow for the process of evaluating them to like reposition these reflexes and beliefs relative to the conditions that we're living in right now. So, all right. So, our early experiences in this hub are reflected by whom we feel comfortable respecting and how comfortable we are receiving respect. We may find that we're most comfortable respecting people who are critical of us, not realizing this is a holding pattern related to early authority. Mistaking kindness for weakness is also related to third hub interruptions and holding patterns. Without awareness of interruptions and holding patterns, it can be uncomfortable to have someone treat us with more or less respect than we believe we deserve. And this can be complicated by the fact that we like shrink our needs. And this is actually something very topical right now that I'm working through, um, is like this thing of like, let me make this easy for you. And then it's not easy. And so it's like my discomfort with things being hard for people. Like I don't want things to be as hard for other people as they were for me. And I also don't want to be an authority figure. So you take those two things as far as like how I would represent even Parinama method and even how I've been as a boss. And then the thing is that it's like projecting that out into the world and then having it reflect back. It's like, wait, I think I want more respect than this. And also it is hard. So now I'm feeling responsible for the fact that it's difficult and that it's like I don't know how to like and the level of energy it takes for me to support that discrepancy. So for me there's a lot in here. There's a lot in here and I think I've talked about this in other readings. Yeah. So without okay. It can be perplexing to be mistreated by people when we are kind to them, and we may find ourselves uncomfortable with leaders who are either too hard on us or who are so lax that we don't grow and develop. And this goes back to just this thing that the central tenet of Parinama is our relationship with ourselves, because these principles are so nuanced and true. All truth contains paradox. So anything that is true in like one situation or circumstance can actually become untrue in another. So that if our integrity and our relationship with ourselves is the long pole in the tent, so to speak, then we're really better positioned to navigate these types of dynamics and nuances. Because at the end of the day, it's like with all of this, when it becomes too overwhelming, when it becomes like whatever it is that arises, is to be able to say to ourselves, you know what, look, I might not kind of fully comprehend, or I might be overwhelmed, or I might, but the thing I know for sure is that there's nothing wrong with me. I'm assuming positive intent in myself first, and then working out from there, and I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna figure this thing out. But if the internal stability is compromised by, like, having shame and being like, "Yeah, I probably am sort of a jerk," or "I probably, I have this tendency to be blah, 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 and I'm, sort of a bad egg on some level." It's really hard to navigate the outside world from a position of instability and, like, doubt in the deepest positive intent in yourself. And yes, 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 there is accountability for the things that we do, but too much of a topic for this. So I'm going to read the characteristics of a balanced and out of balance seventh hub, and then I'm going to wrap it up. Okay. So balanced third hub characteristics: energetic and at ease, good posture, responsible and reliable, not fixated and obsessed, self disciplined, has inner authority, listens to itself, learns from losing and celebrates wins. Hmm, yeah. Reflects on past performance to fuel future improvements with minimal excuses or defensiveness. Is open to feedback without being defensive. Is spontaneous, warm, playful, and humorous. Has a positive sense of self, usually tries its best, takes healthy risks. Can be firm and direct, but doesn't attempt to break another person's will to get its way. Hierarchy. People with higher titles have more power than I have, but they're not more important than people with less power than I have. So, a sign of embodied power is the ability to take direction from someone considered lower status without feeling agitated or ruffled. When power is externalized, there's a near constant inner turbulence because every interaction either supports or undermines our sense of confidence and self worth. When we can sense our personal power emanating from within us, we know who we are regardless of how people treat us. And when we are treated poorly, we hold others accountable for their actions and do not second guess ourselves. So this is something also very topical for me in a particular area of my life, which is, this reminds me of how the third hub is on top of the second hub, which is like relates to emotional regulation. And if we are not capable of feeling and like effectively being conscious of our feelings and emotionally regulating ourselves, our ability to maintain and have it's like a block on our ability to like really have a healthy balanced third hub, because everything is always an emotional matter about whether, my authority is being undermined or whether I'm getting the right amount. And for me, one of the strengths I have is that, like, really plays out in the practical matter of business, is that how somebody's treating me, I don't react to it. I actually tend to look. I mean, I'll have an initial reaction like, "Oh, I don't like that," but I'll look at it objectively and consider how that person's actions are playing into the longer term output that I'm looking to create. And so I don't just react because it's like, "Oh, they're coming for me." I look at it and I think, "Okay, like, this just needs to be handled in this particular way so it doesn't impact my outcome." And one of the things that I will say is that is incredibly differentiating characteristic to have, and folks that observe it respect it to a significant degree because they recognize it. And it's very difficult for folks who try to undermine you to be able to do so when you're like when you have consciousness around this. So people who can like upset you and send you into states of, there are politicians that do this. They're very good at this, and they're very good at actually tapping into the reality that a lot of people don't even have awareness that emotional regulation is a thing. Like that people are like, oh, that's just my personality. I'm passionate. And it's like, yeah, like hyper reactivity and like personalizing things and like this is that, like that is not that is that is definitely an adaptation or even under development in a hub if that hasn't been developed. And it's when we talk about transform everything with Parinama method, this is this is it, because this transforms everything. Like if your emotional reactivity, if you can sense your inner, to really tune into yourself and understand that any person's reaction to you is really a projection, and you can make the decision about whether that projection matches up with your sense of reality, and also make a decision about your reaction as it relates to you getting the things that you would like to have out of your life. This is a thing, and it's interesting because most of the way this is portrayed in most of the way we see this is in sociopathy, is people being able to think very clearly under duress. So, but the thing is that clarity is actually comes from no feeling, right? And what is like lack of empathy in the sociopathy. It's just not being able to be activated because you just are cut off from feeling. Here, we're actually feeling and being able to evaluate it. So it's like the best of both worlds. But it's important, I think the thing with this is that it's really important, because if this quality is not is just owned by sociopaths, they will always be able to overpower, because emotions are completely destabilizing for people. People walking around like, oh my God, like I can't believe they said this, they said, and then I'm blah 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 blah. Like you're in an old patterning, and you're literally draining the resource of your like chi. And like the idea that it's like, well, I'm doing this because I'm actually a person who cares, or I'm doing this because I'm passionate, or I'm doing it just, this is who I am. Take it, if this is a thing for you, take a minute to evaluate this, or evaluate this. Realize there's something like a much greater possibility that you can still feel, but you can become significantly more effective in terms of how one responds and the impact that one has in terms of gaining the respect of the people that you actually want to recruit for your purpose and your mission. So in Out of Balance, third hub characteristics, actually liking reading this. I like this. Out of Balance, third hub characteristics: believe status determines a person's value, exhaustion, burnout, low energy. That's one of the things. It's like the expenditure of energy. The expenditure of emotional energy isn't like, it's like you get access to this burst of energy, but that doesn't mean that like more has been created. It just means that you're overspending your budget, and you're going to have to like, it's like your budget hasn't increased. You've just put yourself in energetic debt. Midsection is weak, bent, or abdominal distended. Is overly anxious about disappointing people. Uses caffeine, stimulants, and or sugar for energy. Yeah, I'm usually so I've been like very mindful about not talking about food and supplements, and in this book, But this one is the reason I did put stimulants in here is that it's like such a it's just a behavioral thing about like, part of the reality of third hub is that it is, like, in balance. It, like, has a lot of natural energy, and especially when there's, like, the kind of containment, conservation, and regulation of emotional energy, this one your power like, the natural power that emanates from you, you know, expands considerably. And this is kinda like the motor for everything. I mean, this is the motor for charisma. This is it's like the motor for magnetism. This is the motor for, like, having presence. So, okay, back to the qualities. Has difficulty with back after has yeah, this is actually a typo. Has difficulty bouncing back after failure. Can be a sore loser or risk averse. I feel like I should be making note of the typos because at some point, I don't know if I'll ever find that. I don't know. There's a few in here. It's like so far, I think there's like 3. Um, is either grinding or exhausted, rarely in between. Is hardworking but risk averse, fears mistakes, and works with intensity to avoid them. How well it's doing is almost entirely determined by how other people react to it. Hierarchy, people are more important than I am when they have higher titles. Externally compliant and inwardly defiant. Impatient and irritated, feels that others are either too fast or too slow. So, an adaptation in the do hub, as in all the others, is a survival strategy. A shrinking adaptation wants to remain a passenger with other people making the decisions, and the inflating adaptation won't give up the driver's seat. There's a time for both. Dynamism and balance in this hub involves knowing when to drive and when to sit back and enjoy the ride as others take the wheel. When our inner authority has not been established, we fear rejection, embarrassment, or even retaliation if we make mistakes. Balance in this hub is also a healthy relationship with our own errors and the ones other people make. If we cannot forgive the mistakes we make, when we see other people make them, we may consider them deal breakers that cause excessive loss of respect and may push them off imagined pedestals. So, yeah. Yeah, I think one of the things with this book and this methodology is the idea that, um, like one of the things about the overwhelm that people have about reading it is like, oh my gosh, this is so massive. And it's like, how am I going to read it? And it's like, I'll tell you what is happening for me right now is like, is it's not just that you read it. And people have said to me who have completed it, they're like, what next? And honestly, it's kind of like read it again. It'll show you different things. If you're in the process, if you're actually absorbing it, if you're taking it in, if you're contemplating it, and if you're using it to process and expand, like reading, I mean, I don't even, I mean, I wrote it and I reread it and it still keeps like serving me up with, just keeps serving. So anyway, okay, so we did it. The next one is shrinking, inflating in the hub. And I don't know how much more we have here. I'm looking forward to wrapping this one up. It's a little bit more, it's kind of a little bit more than I want. Some of these pages I think go pretty fast, but yeah, I'm very. Oh, so we've got good. Wait, no, it's like 10 pages, I guess. 10, 15. Okay, so I think we can do that. And there's techniques and exercises. So okay, we can do this, guys. We can do Yeah. Oh my god. Okay, yeah, because 'cause we've got shrinking and inflating. I'm looking forward to getting into the 4th hub as it's actually so in my own processing of this, this month is I theoretically am kinda marked to be doing more 4th hub, but it's still very 3rd hub for me right now as I'm working through some of these, like, notions I've talked about in these videos. Now I don't know if right now I don't know if they're videos that got cut or not. So, yeah, who knows? But yeah, working through this stuff in terms of my, like, reconciliation as an authority figure, like, like, holding my position without demeaning myself, and yeah, yeah, like, really coming into that. Yeah, like, in terms of my responsibility in this and really stepping into that, which is really interesting. And, the thing is, like, read the book, it's like there's just it just keeps, the opening key, the aperture continues to expand. So, the more this is practiced, the more is revealed, and the more that's revealed, the more, like, opening and fulfillment. I mean, it's extraordinary because the thing is, I'll also say that it's like as there's openings and, like, disintegration and softening of these, like, hard, calcified adaptive behavior patterns where there's more, like, nuance that comes, like, and dynamism that's brought into the hub. Other things happen, just I mean, I don't know how all this is constructed, but other things happen where other qualities open up that are surprising. It's like, "Oh, I didn't know that was connected to that." So, it's like even things about being like, holding my integrity, it's like in situations, it's like, it's like, well, pop that quality will pop up in something else, and it's like, "Oh, that's nice. I like how that works," as, like, an integrated aspect of myself that's, like, that works across the board. So, anyhow, super appreciative. Thank you for watching and staying along for the ride here. And, yeah, let me just keep on trucking here, and I'm looking forward to it. So thank you so much. Of course, always there's a shout out from Mira. Um, Listen, if you want a shout out, just write a comment, interact with us. Yeah, it's really appreciated. It really matters. I mean, there really is, you know, people will like I've mentioned before, people DM me a lot on this, but which is fine. But I'm starting to cross over into the demands on my time, and I don't want to discourage anybody from reaching out to me, but I do want to say that a lot of people do, and the discoverability of this is really important and part of how you as a watcher of this participates in this becoming something that more people can find is interacting with this content. Watching it is like amazing, and also the mission of getting this out to expand more people and give more people access, because ultimately what this means is that the more people that are, like, in this process, it is better for your process, because the more people in the world are who are operating from a higher level of conscientiousness, it's ultimately like this is it's just I mean, it's ultimately, like, part like, one of the pains, I think, of an emerging practice is, like, wanting more people. So and that's another thing is that I'm figuring out right now, which is how to build the community around this in a way that people are like, helps people process and makes people comfortable, because right now, the sustainability and scalability of me, like, taking calls and responding to people, I just it has a lot of it has to do with how important I think it is for people to be heard when they're speaking on this stuff, and that for me, I don't want to be carrying the pressure of that, of someone like talking to me or reaching out to me and me not being able to respond to them, is because things are coming up for people. People want to talk about stuff. People want some, kind of processing. And so ultimately, the two asks I'd have in this is interaction. The other is keep communicating with me. I absolutely don't want to discourage that. Like, even though I understand what I just said might sound like that, keep communicating with me, and also, like, ultimately where that goes is we find a way to create community in this in a way that works. And I haven't figured that out yet, but it'll come. So anyway, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your day, your night, wherever you are watching this. I appreciate you so much, and we'll be talking soon. Bye.